Hello, and welcome back to the Animal Communicator and Healers Summit. This is the place for aspiring and established animal communicators and healers to connect with animals, to connect with their abilities, and to connect with each other. I'm your host, Dr. Kara Gubbins, founder of the Animal Wisdom Circle and creator of How to Talk to Your Pet, the proven 4-step system that teaches anyone and everyone how to communicate intuitively with their pets or with any animal. And today is a great day because we are going to be hearing from Manjiri Latey, and she's going to be talking about how to kickstart your animal communication journey. Manjiri Latey has been working in the field of outdoor education and experiential learning for the last 20 years. She's trained with several Western animal communicators as well as native tribes and native populations in India to become more aligned with her calling and her purpose in life. Currently, she uses telepathic communication with animals, outdoor education, and neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, to facilitate personal growth workshops for a wide variety of people. You can find her online, at earthwise.co.in. Welcome, Manjiri.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited for this conversation because
likewise,
I love what you're up to in the world, and I share your background love of being outside and in nature and connected to everything. So we have a lot we're going to be talking about, but let's start with your story. How did you become an animal communicator?
Nice. I think formally it started about 10 odd years back. After we lost one of our dogs, and there was a lot of physical suffering that I saw him going through in his last days, and I think I was seeking a lot of answers. There was guilt probably I was carrying, and I just wanted closures on a lot of things, and that's where I formally started walking the path of telepathic animal communication. But when I started doing that, I realized this was something that we all have always been doing. And my parents were both mountaineers. So we started our exposure to the outdoors very early in our lives. And I realized we were always doing it. I was just able to put it into a formal structure where my dog had acted as my little guide to induct me into this world. Yeah.
And you intentionally sought out teachers from a wide variety of backgrounds. How did that come about?
True. I think I was blessed and privileged to be born in a country that has a huge, let's say, a spectrum of people that I could tap into their wisdom or I could interact with. So from the monks in the Himalayas to a lot of native tribes that still follow a lot of shamanic practices and have chosen to be away from modern ways of living. So I did tap into them purely because I saw they were doing something very different from what I was doing. And whatever it is that they were doing, they were far more peaceful, more in alignment. So I think that was very intriguing. That was one thing that I consciously tapped into. And I think the Western teachers brought about a process to put a lot of things into perspective. There was a Western view that came from either culture or a religious background. And that helped me triangulate a lot of my understandings. And no knowledge is, it's always going to fit in. It's a jigsaw. Whatever you receive from somebody always fits in to help you create your own picture. So I think both knowledge bases complemented each other beautifully and completed each other as well for me. Yeah.
And when you were on this journey, were there any big challenges where it didn't just fit together, where you're like, I don't get this, how do I understand these two separate things?
In all honesty, the two viewpoints never really stood separately for me. I thought they were just one and the same. It was probably language and slight belief system changes that somebody, when they would articulate a concept, that was the only difference. But I never thought of it as conflict or anything. But probably the biggest resistance I faced was from people around me. And I think world over, anybody who wishes to walk this path, skeptics and a very educationally trained mind probably is our biggest roadblock. And probably the skeptic within us works overtime, and others, of course, feed it more. Probably those were the roadblocks that I personally faced. But in terms of how information was coming my way, whichever form it was coming from, I think it was all congruent and in sync. So, yeah.
So where should somebody start if they want to start this animal communication journey?
Lovely. I think we realize that we've always been doing this. We have all been born incredible telepathic communicators, and probably the earliest communications we've all had is with our own mums when we are floating in her belly and she's been talking to us. Somehow once we come into our modern way of life, and the training we receive, we start compartmentalizing things from a very logical frame of mind. But in all honesty, we've always been doing this. So where does one begin? We've already begun. Right? So there is no formal induction into this space. Probably just accepting that this is innate and this comes naturally to each one of us. This belief is a good starting point, probably, that I've always been doing it, and I just probably need to now walk it formally or with awareness would be a good spot to start from.
I love that, because your story perfectly illustrates how you were already doing it, but you didn't have awareness that you were doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And when we're aware of what we're doing, it's empowering, because then we can do things on purpose.
True.
And yeah, there's just more power. It's just better.
Absolutely.
So if we're already doing this and we just start to have the awareness of it, how can we really focus in on those particular sets of skills or that awareness or training?
Super. I think what we can probably start off with is having a clarity of intention as to whether it is human interactions or it is animal interactions or communications. I think everything in life is intention driven, because energy is then following thought. So even if I am, let's take an example of a human interaction, because then the brain finds it easy to draw a parallel to the animal space as well. That if you meet somebody or interact with somebody for the first time, and something about that interaction rubs you the wrong way, and you are left with this feeling that I can't put my finger on what it was, but would I want to have an interaction with this person again? Maybe not. And it probably could be that person's intentions in that interaction were not very pure or very not well placed. The same thing is with the animal space as well. If we have clarity of intention with what we are getting into this for, I think it's far easier for us. For example, we have people who say, can I use this to spy on somebody, or my neighbor's dog, can I have a word with him as to know what's happening in the neighbor's house, for example. If the intention is malicious or being nosy, then it's never going to follow through. So I think intention is very paramount to start off. And maybe the intention could be something as simple as I just want to have a non-judgmental chat with an animal, because in the human space we fear judgment. With animals, they come from a non-judgmental space completely. So probably it could be something as simple as, let me just have a chat with an animal. Maybe it's a street animal that I have crossed, a neighbor's dog, a family dog, or an animal that I meet in a natural landscape. So that would be a good starting point for somebody. The intention is just to have a chat, and that can be something that they can kickstart.
And just out of curiosity, does your intention change when you went from, hey, this is just cool and fun and I can connect with animals, to now I'm a professional?
Sure. I think the intention became more aligned. And what I mean by aligned is, probably in the beginning, I started with wanting to prove something to myself, that I was capable of doing this, and then prove to people around me that, this is for real. And what I mean by prove is, I really wanted them to experience what I was experiencing. And it was not coming from a space of, you know nothing and I know a lot, but it came from a space of, guys, you should also have this chat with this dog or this cat and, experience what I'm experiencing. And then I soon learned that it was a very futile process, because when they are meant to walk the path, they will. So there was no point in convincing somebody. So intention wise, what did change was, in the beginning, it was for me to even help others realize how amazing this is. And then when the animals guided me into saying, you know what, when they have to, it will reach them. For now, just let's be here and let this communication go through. Probably that alignment or that congruence evolved. And that's where I think the intention changed over a period of time, became more aligned. Yeah.
So you talk a lot about alignment.
Yes.
What exactly do you mean by that?
So, in the land that I come from, Buddhism is a major school of thought and a belief and a religion. And in Buddhism, or any religion for that matter, and in Mahayana Buddhism, it's stressed on continually, is to become what is called Tathagata, which means to be authentic self. And in all quarters of our lives, on a day-to-day basis, we have a constructed self and then we have an authentic self. And more often than not, we tend to present our constructed self in social interactions than our authentic self. And we realize that a lot of people are torn in constantly putting up their constructed self in different contexts, and very rarely are they themselves. And animals are themselves all the time. They are their authentic self, irrespective of who's with them. So if they want to scratch themselves, they will do it even when there are guests walking into the house, and they will roll on the carpet, and they really don't care, what people are going to think. And that's where I realized that reaching the state of what is called Tathagata, or authentic self, evolved for me with a lot of awareness. Though it's easier said than done, it is a process and it is a journey. And probably the minute you're aware that that's what I seek, the journey already begins, or that awareness starts setting in. So that's the congruence or the alignment that I mean. And we realize that it comes very naturally to the animals around us. So they don't make effort. That is, they know life, nothing other than that. So yeah.
I love that. And I love the way that you present it, because I feel like that was a big part of my journey too. I wouldn't call it the constructed self versus the authentic self.
Yeah.
But I love that. It's perfect. I just didn't have that phrase before. I always say I had to let go of all these kind of walls I built up of shoulds, how I should be and how I should act and what I should want. And when I let go of that and I let myself just be myself,
yes,
then it showed up. I mean, I did training and practice and stuff too, but it was really, my process was very similar to what you're describing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How lovely.
I think a lot of us have, in some way, we have to let go of something on the journey.
Yes. And then we hold on to something else. And then we hold on to something else.
And then we let go of that.
Yes, because we're continually seeking. I mean, so many people nowadays have their hashtags are hashtag seeker. And if you ask them, what are you seeking in life? Very rarely can they put their finger on something and say, I'm seeking this, I'm seeking peace of mind. But in actuality, this wow moment or this peace of mind is never meant to be coming easy. So you can't go on a holiday and say, oh, I'm seeking peace of mind, but you come back from a holiday pining for something else. So it's not always easy. And you drop one to hold on to something else. And
it's we're all on a continuous journey. We'll keep growing, we'll keep evolving, we'll keep getting better at this. One thing, Manjiri, that I know a lot of people who are starting on this journey struggle with is that whole idea that you touched on of external validation. Right. What's your take on that?
Super. I think it comes down to social conditioning from childhood, because man is a social animal. So we cannot not have validation. It is a part of our survival or the way we orient ourselves, irrespective of what culture one comes from. But I think what is necessary to view is how much importance or weightage we're giving it in our lives. Because for so many people, that becomes the pivot on which their life revolves. Little things like if people are going to put something on social media or Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat or any of these, platforms, they are so concerned with how many likes they've got, or people don't live the moment. They want to capture it all the time, and they forget living it. So if there is a certain section that comes from that school of thought that external validation is very important, I think it's imperative for them to go back and understand how long is that going to last, and how much the sense of self-worth is dependent on that validation. So in telepathic space, or when you look at nature, or how landscapes are, or how animals are around us, they do not work on validation at all. And probably they are far more happier than we humans are. So probably if we, I remember this Buddhist monk telling me many years back that when we stop wanting to prove something to somebody, the real growth begins. And you realize you're constantly striving to prove something to somebody, even if it is ourselves. That does not mean we don't aspire, but probably externally, how much are we using, on this little weighing scale, how much weightage are we giving the external validation is something that we can review. So probably on our journey of animal communication, even if a family comes back and that cannot validate for you what you have said, I've had a word with your animal, or I've had a chat with your dog and he says XYZ. And if the family couldn't validate either of these, does not mean we are wrong. That does not mean we didn't have a communication with the animal. We probably just need to review how we posed a question. We can always go back and understand, probably the animal wanted to say something else and I jumped to a conclusion. So there are many ways of viewing it. So external validation can be used only as one of the aspects. The rest is for us to believe in the self-trust that what we're doing is beautiful and true.
And you bring up a good point about refinement. Of what we can be in control of is, our internal process and our thoughts, and what, if we turn right or turn left in a conversation with an animal, if we're like, I know what that means, I don't have to ask another question. And just start to, I feel like one of the take-home messages I'm getting from you is this a level of awareness, right? Mm-hmm. The awareness you're already on the journey, the awareness of what your intention is, the awareness of what you have control over and what you don't have control over. Sure. So that you can become always more and more aware. But in that, you can also refine your skills as a conversationalist, a telepathic conversationalist, right?
Absolutely. True.
So how does that work for you? Do you have any tips or tricks for how do you turn off that monkey mind that's like, prove it, or I don't know if I got this right? What do you recommend for people on that?
Great. I think for a lot of people, it can even start as this little game, if they so wish to call it that, because the minute you add the fun element to something, it is a non-judgmental space within ourselves as well, saying, all right, let me have a chat with this animal and let me see what I receive. So probably tip number one would be just work with it from a space of fun and enjoyment, and not that it is a test and that somebody has to be right and wrong. It can just be what it is. And probably that would be a good space to start from, that let me start and let me see what I get. The second tip, a very important one that I learned my way through and the hard way, was for a very long time I couldn't understand or fathom whether it was me making it up or whether it was the animal speaking to me. And then I realized that there's only so much I can make up. And somebody like Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, it's a very well established concept that he has brought out through numerous of his books and his videos, of the concept of the extended mind, that there is only so much I can make up. Everything else is coming from beyond me. And in every day we experience the extended mind when we have this intuitive feeling or this gut feeling, and it's coming from beyond us. So when I realized that there's only so much I can make up, after that it has to be the animal talking to me. I realized that maybe internally it sounded like me talking to myself, or it sounded like my own voice. But the fact that I heard my own voice at the end of a question I asked myself, there is a definitive evidence, let's call it that it is the animal answering, though my own voice was used as a gateway or a medium. So step number one, just start from a space of fun. Step number two, even if it seems as if you're making it up, just go ahead with it anyway. And probably step number three is to continue exploring with as many species as we can, because we tend to limit ourselves with just cats and dogs and domesticated animals around us, or maybe dairy or chicken or pigs that one may encounter in a farm. But it could be the bird that comes home to feed in your little grain bowl, or it could be you're going to go on a holiday, you're going to go whale watching. and you could already have a word with the sea animals before you've gone on that holiday. In our country, for example, people go to wildlife reserves and sight large cats like the tiger or the lion or the leopard, and you can have a vivid conversation with them even before you go there, saying, okay, do I need to do something before I come see you, or would it be okay for you to cross paths with me? And it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. So I think these quick 3 things will help individuals. Yeah.
I love those 3 tips. I think they're fantastic. I want to live by them.
I'm sure you already are.
Yes, and yeah, and no. Like we always need these reminders,
Absolutely. And I think we're still, our best is always under construction. We're always fine-tuning something. What we were yesterday, we aren't the same today. Maybe we fine-tune a little bit more. And
I always think as long as I'm still here in physical form, I'm still on the same journey and I'm still learning, and there's more, right? Like I don't know it all yet because I'm still here. When I'm not here, I'll know I've gotten what I needed to get this time.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So what have you noticed about like different people having different ways of connecting with animals? Because you've taught a lot of people in a lot of different situations about connecting with nature and animals. What variability do we have in our abilities?
Interesting. I think the variability that I have personally noticed comes from probably different cultural backgrounds or different belief systems and upbringing, probably. But the commonality is our ability to send and receive. And its patterns come down to even day-to-day human relationships. So, for example, if we were to just go back into understanding how effective am I as a giver and a receiver, maybe something and that's a journey that I went through personally, where I remember even if I was out with friends for a cup of coffee or a meal, when it came time to pay the bill, I was the one lunging for the bill to pay it because I felt, there was a lot of joy in giving, but just receiving that it's okay for somebody else to pick up the tab for me for a cup of coffee is okay. And there were days or these little instances where I realized that all of us have patterns in being receivers and givers. So across cultures, across populations, across ages, if we just realign our abilities to give and receive and bring them in balance, I think telepathic communication work comes far easier for us. So giving and receiving is one thing I have seen for a lot of people. Okay. The other thing is the education backgrounds they come from. So if somebody comes from a very logical, linear training background, then they tend to question everything. And, in science, if it can't be proven, it's denied all the time. So I think we encourage those people to be a little more compassionate towards themselves as well, saying it's okay. If you are skeptical, it's fine. Start from that space, because your conditioning for all these years educationally for you to succeed has been this formula of being very linear. So it's fine for you to learn how to flex your muscles slowly and easily. Again, this is something that's across the board. So a linear thought process, people take a little bit of time to become comfortable with that. So these are 2 of the things that I've personally noticed over the years. Yeah.
What do you think about I'm thinking like specifically of our senses, because some people have the direct knowing is the easiest. Some people see pictures. What advice do you have for people who are starting out and they're like, well, I don't hear anything, so I'm not doing it right?
Beautiful. Very nice question, Kara. So I'm going to rely a little bit on NLP or neuro-linguistic programming as a backdrop to help a common man or somebody who's already on this path to put the sensory perceptions into perspective. So commonly we all have 5 senses, and each sense has an internal representation and an external one as well. So even if somebody says that, I am sitting in a cafeteria and I ask them, go back in your head on how your cupboard looks or how your wardrobe is or how your kitchen is, they could be physically sitting in a different location, but internally they will still get an image. If you ask them to have a word with a loved one, they can have an internal conversation as well. So every sense has an internal representation. For some people, certain senses are stronger, certain senses are not as strong as the others. But probably for somebody just beginning, or who wants to build a more holistic awareness about their senses, they can even start with what they know they're receiving well. So it could be their own yardstick. That great. Every time I'm talking to an animal, I'm just getting images. Fantastic. Let me start working with what I'm already receiving rather than what I'm not. And before they know the conversations, they will start becoming aware. They will start becoming aware of what are called kinesthetics. That means internal bodily shifts and changes. They could have a change in the taste in their mouth, so which could be a gustatory change for them as well. So they can even start focusing on what they're receiving, because we tend to discount what we are getting in seeking what we are not. So even if they start with, great, I'm receiving an image in conversation 1, in conversation 2, I may get very vivid sounds in my head, that I'm having this wonderful conversation with myself. They can stick with that, and maybe by conversation 3, they'll realize these two are combining to become a whole body experience for them. So each one can start with their senses where they feel they are, and before they know, it's going to be a flood. Gates opening up, and they're going to receive fully. Yeah.
I love that. I love your explanation of the external and the internal. I hadn't really thought about our senses in that way, but now my brain's going like, ooh, like, okay, well, this is going to be fun. Now I'm going to have this awareness that I can go bring to everything I do. So thank you for that, Manjiri.
Yeah.
Do you have any final words of wisdom you want to share with viewers on this journey?
Absolutely. I wouldn't call them words of wisdom. I would just say things that I know have worked for me. One is just jump in, because if we keep waiting for the right moment and keep looking for evidence, it's probably not what we're going to find. So just jump in, start immediately, and from now and this breath. And a lot of people ask, how long will it take to become a good communicator? And I always say, the breath in which you believe you're a good communicator, it's that exhale, and the next breath, it started. So point number 1, I think just jump in and start. Point number 2, I think we ought to really enjoy these conversations, because there is so much wisdom and guidance around us that we are bereft of. I mean, we are so oblivious of, a potted plant in our own house would have such amazing guidance that we have never received, because we don't acknowledge their presence. So the guidance can come from anybody. So just be open to receive that. And third, I think very importantly, we should make sure our ego is as tiny as possible, because when we are not feeding our ego with anything, I think our communication journey is just gorgeous, because animals have no concept of ego. And if we humans can emulate that, every day, every conversation, whether human or animal, is just going to be gorgeous for us. Yeah.
Beautiful. Great advice. Thank you, Manjiri.
Thank you. Thank you.
I feel like so expanded from this conversation. My awareness is definitely expanded. So thank you for me personally. And I hope our viewers feel the same way. I love how you brought this whole journey into a really manageable image and manageable concept of how it can go for people. And you've agreed to come back and do a bonus interview. And we're going to take the same topic on the bonus interview, but we're going to focus on the life lessons on the animal communicator journey. So I hope everybody will come back for that. But before we talk about that, Manjiri, how can people stay in touch with you and learn more about you and your work?
Absolutely. They can always be in touch with us through our website, which is earthwise.co.in. I'd be happy to have online interactions, online sessions, even do consultations. And always, the doors are open for people to come and visit us in India as well for our workshops and physicality. So yeah, the website would be the ideal spot for people to be in touch with us. Yeah.
Beautiful. And we do have a button on this website that will connect you directly to earthwise.co.in, Manjiri's website, for all of the work that she does. And I want to let people know there's another button on this viewing page where you can purchase your All Access Pass. And the All Access Pass allows you to listen to this interview, to all the interviews in the summit, all the bonus interviews, including the one we're about to record with Manjiri, anytime you want, on any device that you want, and for as long as you want. The price does go up when the summit ends, so act now to get the best value, and we will look forward to seeing you over there in the All Access Pass area. But for now, Manjiri, Latey, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your journey with us.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you.
It's my pleasure and my honor. You guys, what have you learned? Come on over to the Facebook group and let me know what sparked you. What's your increased awareness? Because my mind has expanded from this, and I hope yours has too. So come on over and let us know in the Facebook group. We'll look forward to seeing you there, and have a beautiful day, everybody. Bye-bye.